Okay, I'm trying to look on that. Hey, Daryl, is that any better?
Maybe slightly.
Okay.
These web meetings are turning us all into optometrists. Is it better like this or better like
Yes,
this?
they have. Is that audio better?
Yes, that is better.
All right, so we have 36 folks on the call today, so I just wanted to state to everyone this is an internal call for the PSAPs and authorities, so I did see a couple of the carrier folks jump on, but this is our internal call only. So if you are with CenturyLink or one of the other CPE folks are on shadow, you can go ahead and jump off, and then our call with you is actually next week. Okay, great. So I think we are good to go ahead and get started. And somebody just sent a chat saying am I still muffled and soft?
You're still somewhat muffled. It's a little better than before, but still a little garbled.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and try and
Oh,
call
that's
in.
it. That's it right there. Whatever you did.
I'm not going to touch my cord then, so I won't do the call and dance around. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started then. So just a reminder to everyone, you need to sign in to do the roll call. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And the sign-in sheet is that you can just click on it either in the meeting invite or when you go to the website. And Daryl is showing that right now. So you would just hit sign in for the April 8th meeting and then make sure we can log your attendance that way. The meeting also, just from a user's perspective, we'll go through all of our open items business first, and that'll be for the voting members. And then we'll open up the floor for anybody else who wants to participate. All right, so we can get started then and go through the old business that we have open. So just so everyone is aware, we continue to add additional information in our resource folder. So what Daryl has pulled up right now is our discussion items spreadsheet. So this is a great tool for you to go to and just look in the folder on additional documents that we've added in there. So from a big picture perspective, these are the items that we have open right now, and we'll go through those shortly. But from an old business item, what I wanted to cover is just the scheduling. So if you don't mind clicking on the third tab there, Daryl. Almost. There we go. So what I added on this sheet is just a look of what we know going on with the schedule right now and wanted to just cover that with everybody. We do have a couple of PSAPs that have completed their cut, and I say completed, we still have some open items for Bretza. So we really only have Aurora's primary PSAP that has cut completely, and then Weld and their backup site has cut completely. But for Bretza, we have some items that are open as it relates to their pad device, and Westminster Broomfield, they are pending their alley migration. So then when you look down at the rest of these PSAPs in pink, They are on lockdown, so I pulled them out of the schedule and put them in pending dates. What CenturyLink is going to need to do is work with all of you on getting you back in the schedule for your cut date once you're off lockdown and resources become available. Then the ones that I pulled out and put in yellow there, they're on lockdown, but apparently they've given the green light to CenturyLink to continue to work on possibly migration. So that could be a circuit install, testing, etc. So we don't have dates from CenturyLink on what, if any, work they'll do for these PSAPs, but CenturyLink indicated they've been in conversations with those agencies. So from an old business perspective, the biggest thing is the schedule and making sure you're taking a look and you know when your date's coming up and the status of your project. And if you're able to have folks inside your PSAP to do the migration, the installation of equipment, and get ready for testing. Does anybody have any questions about the schedule?
Is anybody from Alamosa on? Did Alamosa cut yesterday?
This is Robert, and we did not. I'm still trying to work with Solacom to see when we can get the combined projects done. I'm waiting to hear back from them. I haven't heard anything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for CSP Alamosa has to do with getting those SBCs delivered and configured. So that date will have to be determined for them as well. Right now, what we can tell is Grand Junction and Route County are on track, and hopefully they'll be able to cut shortly.
And that is what we're waiting on. There's going to be travel costs involved with Solacom coming down to do the SBC install. So we're combining that project, like I mentioned last week, with implementing text to 911. So we're just working out the details and logistics of that. Our goal is to get it done this month, but we'll see how that goes.
Great, Rob. Thank you for the update.
Kimberly, this is Jason from Routt County. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jason, go ahead.
Our rack equipment was installed yesterday, and they did their preliminary testing. I think that went well. And then we're scheduled for pre-migration testing on the 15th. So I think we're good to go, and we're on schedule in Routt County.
Okay, and Jason, just to follow up, did they do proper notifications for you like you requested on Friday?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, we'll take pretty much over no. So that's slight progress. All right, does anybody have anything else about the schedule that you wanted to bring up or discuss? So we have a chat comment from Tina that they would be contacting early this week about installation, and we haven't heard from them. So I think CenturyLink is regrouping internally about coming up for your installation. And I will ask Cindy to make sure she follows up with you. Okay. That was the only old business items that I had pending. Does anybody have anything else for new business?
This is Tom at Clear Creek. I just wanted to see if our migration date had changed.
Yeah, let's take a look at that and see what we've got down for you. So it looks like we have you down in June.
Yeah. And so that
Sorry, does that sound right?
yeah, I just wanted to make sure it hadn't changed.
Okay. Yeah, CenturyLink should not be changing these without conversations with all of you. Obviously, your coordination on the CPE side is a really big deal and all of your different resources. So you shouldn't see anything surprising on here or anything different than what your understanding is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kimberly, did you see the messages from Jennifer?
No, thank you. Okay, so it looks like Grand Junction has had a problem with the equipment dropping communication to the CPE equipment, and they're working on that and hopeful to still do the pre-migration testing today. Fingers crossed for Grand Junction. They're scheduled to cut on the 14th, so hopefully that problem with the audio will get resolved. Thank you for the update, Jennifer. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to new business then. So, and I don't remember if we do the new business with the discussion items spreadsheet or not. So let me go back to the agenda. Yep, so we do the discussion items spreadsheet now on where we are for CenturyLink and the items we want to bring forward to discuss with CenturyLink. And if you want to pull, there we go. So the first item really that we're still trying to get our arms around, and that's item number 82 on here. And that's this testing with the CPE equipment that fall outside of your Motorola Vesta or your Viper. So really creating an opportunity to allow those vendors to do some testing with Intrado Solution and CenturyLink. So CenturyLink responded that they determined and they were going to allow some testing to take place with, specifically, I want to say it was Solacom as well, but does anybody have any questions? Do you know if your CPE folks have been contacted and if any of this testing has been able to take place? So I know that Clear Creek, you specifically were pending, and then your folks gave for Westel gave a thumbs up that they were good to go. Did they actually get to physically test the CPE solution in the
No,
Intrado? Okay.
no. So we're planning to do that on site after the equipment is installed, but before our migration date. So it looks like equipment goes in on 5/15, and then June 6th is our migration.
Okay, so you'll be able to do testing, but it won't be in a lab environment. It'll be just once the equipment is installed.
Yep, yep.
Okay. Great. So obviously this was a concern for several of the folks, specifically Solacom and Callworks and Westel PSAPs. They wanted to make sure that their solution on the CPE side was ready to go on this new ESInet. So CenturyLink is committed to work locally with everybody to make sure testing can happen. And what we just heard from Clear Creek on a Westel solution, that's going to happen after the equipment is installed in the back room at the PSAP. So if you fall into one of these categories, we're going to want to track that closely and make sure that you feel comfortable that your CP is going to be able to respond well and process calls correctly on the network. Anybody have any questions with this one? Okay. The next open item has to do with these pad devices. And so what we learned at Bretza was they have a remote host environment, and the remote PSAPs, they don't have pad devices installed there. And so what that means is when they need to evacuate, they would have to phone CenturyLink in order to reroute their 911 calls, because they wouldn't be able to, as we did in the legacy environment, flip that switch and do the abandonment module and evacuate. So what Cindy is working on with CenturyLink is the network configuration on installing these remote pad devices at the remote PSAPs. We don't have anything back from CenturyLink on this, so this is still an open item that they are looking at how they could amend the tariff to accommodate this. So no solution yet, and if you are in a remote host environment, there's a couple of ways you may be able to do this through your CPE equipment, or you're going to have to phone CenturyLink's NOC and have them reroute your calls at the selective router. Anybody have any question on this item?
Kimberly, this is Daryl. We'll want to get CenturyLink to confirm this next week on our full ESInet users group call, but they told me that at the remote sites, they are planning on providing basically remote pads. They're going to actually have to put in a separate circuit just to run those pads out to the remote sites, but they're planning on providing those remote pads at no additional cost. And by doing so, they'll be able to do it without actually amending the tariff, which is a bigger process than they want to go through for just this change.
That's a great update. Do you know how they're going to be able to document that this is something that they'll provide at the current tariff rate? If they don't have to amend the tariff, can they just provide like a supplemental or file a comment on an update, perhaps?
That wasn't discussed. I think that would be a good question to bring up at the meeting next week.
Okay, because it would be great for them, even if when they provide their update in their filings, if they documented this somehow, but we can talk about that next week with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great solution.
Now, they did tell me that the other pad issue that Bretza had was at, I think it's the sheriff's office. Their pad device is actually located in a basement behind a locked door, which is not convenient for them, obviously. And Bretza had requested it to be moved, and they're still stating that since that's on the other side of the DMARC, that they may have to charge for that. But I have not heard anything from them yet as to how much they're going to charge or whether that's still the plan. Patty, are you on the call today? Or anybody else from Bretza? Okay, well, we'll have to, we should ask about that.
Daryl, am I off mute?
Yes, you are.
Am I off the mute? Oh,
Yep.
okay. Yeah, we were provided with a cost to do that, and I'm not sure that it's been implemented yet. I know that they were anxious to do it, but then with the lockdown, I'm not sure if Boulder County was going to allow them in there, but I can double check on that. And the second thing is about the calling into the NOC. Just a reminder, when we did test that, it was quite a long wait to get in. So now maybe that's been changed on their end, but it was like 5 minutes or something because we were put in the queue waiting.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's going to be the interim solution, I don't know what CenturyLink can do on their end to expedite that call when somebody does call in.
And maybe that's something we can ask next week as well, is if they're able to reduce that wait time just in the meantime until they get the remote pads installed.
Patty,
Go ahead.
Patty, this is Bruce. I was curious, do you route any of your PSAPs outside of your, I think you're on Viper, right?
Yes.
So do you, in the case of abandonment, do you route outside of your current Viper system to a PSAP that's not on your Viper system?
I don't believe that we have. I'm assuming that we can moving forward once we get a neighbor that's able to take those calls, but right now we just do it among the 4 PSAPs. We have kind of a round robin set up in the event.
Right. Right. And we don't currently have abandonment switches. We do it all within Viper. I think the only one for us that'll be remote that we want to make sure has this capability is the sheriff's office, because all of our other PSAPs are really too small to take their calls.
Yeah, we have the 3 of the 4 could take the calls, so we've got a little system set up.
Okay, I was just curious if you were using that capability.
And I think on the extension of the pad device, I know that Weld is also waiting for that. They need to get that moved and extended to a more reasonable location for their PSAP. And so understanding a little bit more about the costs, because if CenturyLink is going to charge for relocating that pad device, then it may be cheaper for folks internally to just run that cable and have CenturyLink just move their physical equipment. Mike, is that accurate that you're pending the same issue with relocating the pad device, or did they get that taken care of?
No, we're still waiting on that, Kimberly.
Okay. Okay, and so we have 2 items within this piece that we need to follow up on. The next item that we've been talking to CenturyLink about and reiterating constantly has to do with this communication and making sure on a couple of fronts. One, that they're communicating with an email group and not just an individual. And so it's up to the PSAPs and authorities to provide the emails over to Cindy and her team about who should be included on her emails. That way she's not sending them to just one point of contact. And the next piece is that CenturyLink then needs to be using the email group to be communicating, because we are still having texts show up that are coming without notice, unannounced, and wanting to get access into the PSAPs in the back room. So we've been really emphasizing this with them, that they need to make sure that they're communicating in a group and not with just 1 or 2 individuals. So if you continue to have problems in this area, let us know so we can circle back and get that corrected for your account. Our part is to make sure that we are emailing Cindy with the correct points of contact for your project deployment. The last item we had that I want to clear out had to do with, on our last call, with PSAP's authorities getting an invoice or getting billed and getting an email that after the circuits are installed that looks and feels very much like they're going to be billed for those circuits. And that's just an automatic notification coming through the CenturyLink system indicating the circuit is installed, and then it generates this notice to you via email about it, quote unquote, billing. And CenturyLink's response is you can ignore those. It's auto-generated, and it's not something that you need to take any action on or feel like you need to be paying it. It's truly not an invoice. It's a notice that the circuit is installed. So I'm at the point of closing that out unless anybody has any other questions on this.
Hey, Kim, this is Scott Newman. Not specific to that, but it's interesting that people are receiving those notices, because I'm not sure if Wes is on the line, but we've been asking for our invoice for the installation since January, and we still don't have it. So we have not been able to apply for any of the grant fund reimbursement yet.
Okay, I'm going to add that as a different item to follow up with your billing.
So, Scott, I asked Wes about that, I want to say, I think it was late last week. I asked him about that, and he said that he's expecting those invoices to go out within a couple of weeks. So probably this week or next week.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. Appreciate it.
Of course, they've said that before, so.
Right, yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. And Kimberly Wells, the same way, we're waiting invoicing as well.
Okay. No, that's great. I mean, there's a process here. They want their money. We want to be able to get reimbursed on the grant. I'm sure Daryl wants to have the grant process flowing too, so we can work out all the bugs and how this is going to happen. So it's important that, especially the PSAPs that have already cut, like Aurora and Bretza, that you get an invoice so that you can get those processed. And then we'll track that again for Weld, Broomfield, and Westminster. Anything else that people would like to see added on our discussion spreadsheet that we need to send over to CenturyLink so we can have a discussion with them next week?
So Kimberly, we skipped the first item on the sheet, which was just me reaching out to Jerry Eastman with the CIAC. And I
Yes.
did do that. I just want to let everybody know he is scheduled to be on our call next week to give a short presentation.
Okay, that's great. And I apologize about that. I do remember seeing that email that he is going to be joining us. So thank you for that update.
Yep.
One item that I have for everybody is we just learned about 8-digit versus 10-digit ELI, and we have a spreadsheet from CenturyLink that will get added into the resource folder. And what we learned on Friday was if your CP is configured for 8-digit ELI, the voice path is being impaired, and you won't have two-way voice path when you are trying to transfer calls on the ESInet. So they've been working with Intrado. They've identified the PSAPs that are processing 8-digit ELI versus 10-digit, and it's really preferred for everybody to have that CPE changed at the time that you're doing your cut at the and you can't do it ahead of time, so it would have to be something you would do simultaneous to your migration on the ESInet. And so we're trying to get our arms around what kind of work would that look like, how much effort is that. Looking at our PSAP model, it's from the Viper, it's basically a drop-down box. It's really not a big deal once you have those numbers built in. But there is some legwork here. Now, CenturyLink said it only impacts those PSAPs that are choosing to go PGM versus doing the SIP handoff, and that they've done configurations on the ESInet to allow 8-digit, but the preferred setup is to do a 10-digit LE. And so the spreadsheet that we have from CenturyLink, what I want them to go through and add to it, which they don't have a column, is which ones of those PSAPs they identified are PGM, because then we're going to want to send out some specific information to all of you that fall into that category so you can engage your CPE techs and start having that conversation about 10-digit LE versus 8-digit. So something new that we're just trying to get our arms around. The impact was a delay to Fremont because of this information. They went out to Fremont, they installed the PGM, they started to do some testing, pre-migration testing, and they were having problems with the call path and the audio on the call path. So that's when they found out that it was the 8-digit LE versus the 10-digit that was creating the hang up. So we want to try and get ahead of this versus waiting until they're actually doing the cut for the PSAPs. So this is just an item that we need to do more work on. We don't have anybody identified in the next few cuts that falls into this category outside of Fremont, which Fremont is working with CenturyLink on what change they need to do from 8-digit to 10-digit LE. But we want to make sure that everyone's aware that you may be getting emails from us about this information.
And Kimberly, I just added that spreadsheet to the resources folder.
Okay, great. So yeah, if you don't mind clicking on it real quick, again, what their big message is. So this is the list of all the PSAPs that are 8-digit, passing 8-digit LE versus 10-digit. And they said it only impacts you if you're going to do the PGM, but the best configuration, industry standard that they would like to see on the ESInet is the 10-digit LE. So quite a few PSAPs fall into this category. And again,
half of them.
Yep, about half of us. So any questions on this right now? Okay. So the next item we have is a conversation we're going to have next week, in addition to having Jerry join us. After we're done with our call going through the discussion items with CenturyLink, we're also going to have a conversation with them about how our firewalls are getting configured. And this part of the conversation really is for IT folks that may be needing to hand off IP addresses to CenturyLink to work on this firewall configuration. So the two firewalls, CenturyLink and our firewalls, can talk to one another. And it was some information that Grand Junction really started to dive into and ask some great questions that is calling us to regroup, all of us to just kind of sit back and talk with CenturyLink specifically about how this handoff needs to happen. So CenturyLink has provided some resources that Daryl has already added into the folder that you can look at, but next week you may want to have your technical folks join the call. So then when it's time for you to do your PSAP migration and they're starting to ask questions about IP addresses, they have these resources and some of this information from the meeting next week that they can fall back on. And Jeremy, I don't know if you're on the call today or not, but did you want to speak to that at all? And I don't see that he's on. So again, next week we're going to talk about
I'm sorry, Kimberly, can you hear me?
Yep, I can now. Go ahead.
So I'd be happy to speak to that next week. We've got some good discussions on that. I'd love to talk to the IT folks. As this is evolving, we're not going to have a best practices guide, but we're going to have some good ideas on how to move forward to coordinating some best practices.
Okay, that's great. And I really think it's going to be important for people to be able to come to this now that this project is really starting to take some shape. We've got some of our early adopters on the ESInet. We have other people coming on asking questions. If you do a PGM integration, this doesn't apply to you, but it's still good information for you to probably hear and understand in case you end up switching in your project and decide to do a direct SIP. So those that want to stay on, we'll tack this technical call on at the last part of our call next week. So that way, those that don't want to be a part of it, they can just drop off. But it'll be something we'll be able to dive into with the CenturyLink technical folks. And I think they're going to have Intrado join us too. Great. So anybody have anything else that they would like to add to the discussion items spreadsheet for CenturyLink to have to respond back to us on? All right. If you think of anything, again, don't hesitate to email us so we can get it added on there, or feel free to jump on the spreadsheet yourself and just add those items. And then I also wanted to just remind everybody we do have a tab that we're tracking. It's the post-cut lessons tab. It's the second tab over on the spreadsheet. And as we learn things from those that have cut and have gone before us, and if we're tracking open items that they're troubleshooting, we are just making note here. That way, when your project is getting ready to take form, you can take a look and see if any of these items apply to you or allows you to ask questions of your CPE provider or the CenturyLink team and make sure that they've got these items covered. Okay. So our next item on the agenda is open discussion. Does anybody have anything else for the group that they would like to go over as it relates to this project?
Hey, this is Tom at Clear Creek.
Yes, Tom.
Just something I came up against this week. We had our power installed, but looking at backup power, I'm reaching out to my IT to go and spec battery backup specifically for the load that the new equipment's going to be drawing. There's, that's going to be an extra cost on our end that people probably need to be aware of and prepare for.
That is an excellent point, and I don't remember us ever talking about taking a look at the pool of the power when they are telling us what the power draw is, and then we get everything in the server room ready to go, but then going further than that and looking at our UPS and our generators. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to add that into our cut lessons. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody have anything else? Okay, so as you have time, which I know that's a funny word these days, but as you have time, take a look at the documents that have been added in the resource folder. And then next week, we will go over these items with CenturyLink and get a status on them. And we'll also have that other presentation discussion with Jerry Eastman about security. So I would grab your technical folks for the call next week, because after we talk about security, we'll dive into talking about firewalls. And so it'll be a great back-to-back opportunity for us to do a little bit deeper dive into technology. Okay, so if nobody has anything else, we'll go ahead and conclude the call. And thank you, everyone, and we will talk next week.
Thank you,
Have a
Kimberly.
great rest of your day. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.